Jack Stinger in The Haunting of Whitlock Manor. Written by Philip Wolfe. Narrated by Colin White. Production copyright, Wolfe Entertainment Productions. Part 1. Facing Fears. Do the thing you fear most, and the death of fear is certain. Mark Twain. Chapter 1. The Ghostwriters. Sunday, March 5th, 1989, 9:30 a.m. Jack Stinger would have slept past noon if it weren't for his friends ringing the doorbell. At the sound of the impatient ding-dong, ding-dong, he shot up in bed as if reacting to an acid reflux attack and ripped off his PJs. It was the fastest Jack had ever changed into his clothes. Any faster and he'd probably discover a hidden talent as a quick-change artist. "Who's at the door this early?" Jack heard his mother say from the kitchen. She was preparing breakfast while his father and brother still slept. "I got it, Mom," Jack said, speed-walking to the front door. He knew it was his friends because he rode bikes with them to the dirt trails every weekend. Today's forecast was partly cloudy, cool, and 10% humidity. A near-perfect day to get out and ride. He swung open the front door and found Stuart on the porch, sitting stationary on his blue mongoose bicycle with mag wheels. Billy sat next to him on his black and yellow GT Pro. Billy pointed to the corner of the porch. "You left your bike out last night." Jack glanced at his bike leaning against the wall. He was 12 when he got that silver diamond back. He had wanted it for years. The chromed-out, freestyle, lightweight one with gel rubber handle grips and foot pegs bolted to 20-inch wheels. It was the holy grail of bicycles, but super expensive. Jack saved up money for years using the allowance he received from his mother for helping her clean houses at her second part-time job, and it was worth the wait. "Wake your ass up!" Stuart said, loud enough that Jack's mother overheard him. "If that's Stuart," Jack's mother said, projecting her voice, "tell him I said to watch his mouth." Stuart leaned through the doorway over his handlebars. "Sorry, Miss Stinger." "Busted," Billy cackled. Stuart rolled back and punched him in the arm. "Shut up, you idiot." Billy winced at the jab and rubbed his arm. "Asshole." Jack stepped out onto the porch and shut the door behind him. "Keep it down, guys." "Well, if you hadn't overslept, none of this would have happened," Stuart said. "You ready to go?" "Give me 5 minutes." Stuart glanced at his watch. "Hurry up, the day's nearly half over," he laughed. "I bet there'll be a lot of riders there today. It's so nice out. Oh, and we need to hit up the old spook house later this afternoon." Billy darted a gaze at Stuart. "Yeah, I don't feel like going there today." "Come on, don't be a wuss," Stuart rolled his eyes, then regarded Jack with a faint smile. "What do you say? You up for going there later?" "Yeah, I guess so," Jack said, opening the door and stepping back inside. "Wait here." He shut the door on his friends. Stuart spun his bike around on the porch and faced the front lawn. "You can't back out this time," he said, glaring at Billy. "It's Jack's turn to break in." Billy felt he had no choice. "Sure, I'll ride to the trails with you guys, but I'm not going inside that house if Jack finds a way in." Stuart gave a sly grin. Whitlock Manor was an old, abandoned 3-story mansion located a couple miles from their neighborhood. It stood alone at the cul-de-sac on Cemetery Hill. Jack, Stuart, and Billy had visited the place shortly before sunset once or twice a week ever since they had discovered it in the 5th grade. When rumors spread around school about the house being haunted, Jack decided to investigate it. He loved watching horror movies and reading scary books. And he also liked going to haunted houses every weekend in October. So of course this would be right up his alley. In 6th grade, Jack formed the Ghostwriters Bike Club, creating it strictly for riding bikes with Stuart and Billy to Whitlock Manor. He wanted to keep the club between the 3 of them. If his other friends found out about it, Jack thought they might try to take advantage of the club and expand it with more members beyond his control. The smaller the better. The mission of the Ghostwriters was to dare each other to enter the house alone. But no one had ever stayed around long enough to find a way inside. It was too creepy. Even Jack was afraid. Knowing there were no actors inside that would jump out and scare him made it feel different from the fake haunted houses he was used to walking through during Halloween. This house was real, not just a maze of walls and panels with flame-retardant poly sheeting. Whether it was really haunted or not remained to be seen. When Jack had first met his friends, he was just moving into the neighborhood and going into the 4th grade. Just days after moving into their new home, his parents dug a big enough hole to plant a weeping willow in their front yard. He spotted Stuart and Billy cruising through the neighborhood on their bikes as his parents were filling the hole with water. He invited them over to jump in the murky watering hole while his parents took Polaroid photos of them seizing the moment, thus beginning their inseparable friendship. Riding the bus to the arcade at the mall, drinking from the water hose, wading in creek beds, and smoking hollow twigs in the woods would go down as their fondest memories. They were responsible kids, rarely getting into trouble, returning home when the street lamps turned on. Time flew by, and now they were sophomores in high school attending Remington High together. Jack didn't want to keep Stuart and Billy waiting on the porch any longer than necessary. He brushed his teeth with one pass, then hurried into the kitchen and warmed a Pop-Tart in the toaster. His mother was scrambling a bowl of eggs. "Let me guess. You're going to the trails with your friends." Jack popped up the pastry prematurely from the toaster and headed to the front door. "How'd you know?" he said with half his breakfast in his mouth. "See you later." Back outside, his cheeks expanding like a chipmunk's, he grabbed his bike. "Damn it, I forgot to bring water," he fretted as he took off down the sidewalk with his friends. Several hours later, after a hot, fun-filled day at the trails, the Ghost Riders rode to their favorite burger joint, the Feed Bag, for a late lunch. Then spent some time playing the Kung Fu Master arcade game before finally heading to the old house on Cemetery Hill. It was about a 30-minute bike ride to Whitlock Manor, and by the time they made it across town, it was 5:30, and the sun had stained a pinkish tint across the horizon. The Ghost Riders stopped at the top of the T-junction of Claiborne Street and Cemetery Hill for a quick break before proceeding. A couple of eerie broken street lamps leaned like lazy guards between them on either side of the street. Sharing the same name as the graveyard half a mile behind the old house, Cemetery Hill was a secluded quarter-mile street that led to Whitlock Manor. The city had recently planned to rezone the area, to connect roads and develop a future apartment complex. The construction of a small business district was also in the talks. But for some undisclosed reason, the city had delayed the project indefinitely. "I think tonight's the night," Jack said. "I can feel it." "I bet you can taste it too, like my farts," Stuart said. "Since you mentioned it, it's your turn to enter. No excuses. I don't care if you have to knock a hole in the wall to get inside." Some things never changed between these boys. They were the type of friends that could embarrass your mother. Stuart was the tallest of the bunch, and more apt to speak his mind. His sarcastic personality was like his father's, which could get them both into trouble sooner than later. He was also a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, a game many parents hated for their kids to play. Until a few years ago, people thought it was a game of witchcraft, the work of the devil, and that the spells they learned in the game were real. Stuart played D&D with his other friends at least once a week. He enjoyed gathering around the table with them and creating adventures or developing quests with his imagination. Billy was the skittish one amongst the Ghost Riders. In the beginning, he enjoyed visiting Whitlock Manor. But as rumors at the school intensified about the old house, however, he became scared and lost interest. "Sorry, guys, but I'm not going any further than the steps of the front porch this time," Billy said before they headed down Cemetery Hill. "Why did we even form this club? I hate that place." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a switchblade comb. Pressing a button in the center of the handle, the comb flipped out like a real switchblade. The gimmick was a purchase he made from a Pranks and Gags catalog. Unfortunately, when it was shipped, It had a cracked handle. Rather than waiting another 4 to 6 weeks to receive a new one, he taped the handle and cut a slit down the seam so that the spring-loaded comb would still function. "You're going as far as we go, bro," Stewart told Billy. "You know we don't break tradition." Billy ran the comb through his hair, folded it into the handle, and slid it into his back pocket. He had a habit of combing his hair when he was nervous. "You can't force me to do anything," he said. "I'll just go back home and—" "Then you're out of the club," Stewart snapped. "Hey," Jack intervened. "You can't cut members from the club without a vote, so stop with the threats." "Members stick together, man," Stewart reminded Jack. Jack turned to Billy. "Are you really going to chicken out? I'd like for you to be there when we discover the truth about this house. You're a part of this team." Billy looked down at the ground for a moment, then said, "Look, I like being in this bike club with you guys. But what I don't like is when you try and force me to do something I don't want to do." "Then you're not part of this team," Stewart said. "Shut up, Stewart," Jack warned. "Fine, I'll come with y'all, but like I said, I don't want to go past the steps of the front porch," Billy insisted. "What do you say? Is it still cool that I hang with you guys?" Jack glanced at Stewart, who shrugged in return. "Deal," Jack said back at Billy. "Now that we've wasted all this time, let's do this." The Ghost Riders set their bikes into motion down Cemetery Hill, their wheel hubs clicking in unison as they coasted between an infestation of potholes. Coming up on the cul-de-sac, they eased their bikes to a stop and gazed up at the sinister-looking mansion surrounded by a conglomerate of trees. Vines snaked up the front of the house, completely covering the second-level bay windows, and weeds had grown over the winding pathway leading to the extended wraparound porch. The place looked as if it had been abandoned for centuries. "Hey, the for sale sign is gone," Stewart pointed. Jack wiped his face with his shirt. "I never noticed it was missing before," he said. "I wonder if someone bought it." "I don't know," Stewart said. Jack peeled his eyes from the upper window and over to Stewart. "We've been coming here together for what, 5 years, right? It's time we debunked the rumors once and for all." Billy shook his head. "I'm staying right here," he griped. "Not a chance, Chunky," Stewart said. "Stop being a wimp and step out of your comfort zone." "Quit screwing around," Jack snapped. Stewart stared creepily into Billy's eyes. "Wuss," he said, and got off his bike, the bicycle toppling to the ground as he stomped away. Jack, shaking his head at Stewart's treatment of his bike, utilized the kickstand. He waited for Billy to set his bike down, and then they walked together to catch up with Stewart. Ascending the front porch steps, Jack glanced behind him at Billy. Billy was sticking to his word and hung back at the bottom of the stairs. The porch wrapped around the corners of the house and continued 10 feet along both sides. A paint-chipped swing swayed from its rusted chains in the far corner, squeaking to a repetitious, ghostly beat. "That's not creepy at all," Stewart said, sarcasm dripping from his words. Jack stepped to the swing and grabbed it to stop the irritating noise. "Oh, look!" Stewart pointed to the lower corner of the window nearest to Jack. "The window is broken. Wasn't last time we were here." Jack's curiosity antenna rose, and he stooped to investigate, tapping gently on the small hole at the impact point of the spider crack. It looked like a BB or a pellet from an air rifle had pierced the single-pane window. "Hey, stop looking at the dumb crack and break the window," Stewart intimidated Jack. "Then you can crawl through and finally get inside the house." He approached the front door and twisted the handle. "Damn, still locked." "Yep, go for the window, dude." Jack pulled his hand away from the window, worried he might prick his finger on the glass. "No way! I'm not going to risk cutting my—" A sudden gust of wind blew through the porch, and the swing behind Jack rammed against the side of the house. Jack's heart flew into his mouth, and he quickly jumped to his feet. Bang! The swing hit against the house again. Stewart flinched from the loud noise, his eyes swelling to the size of silver dollars. "Shh! Listen! Did you hear that?" he asked, taking a step back. "I heard someone talking." Jack stood motionless, ears pricked. He could hear what sounded like the faint, garbled sound of someone's voice. A cold draft pecked at the back of his neck. "The window!" He suddenly remembered and stooped to the window again. "Listen!" But Stewart had already leapt back toward the stairs. "I think someone's living here. We should bounce before we get caught." Jack thought if Stewart had a tail, it would be curling between his legs about now. Stewart, he thought, despite all that stuff he said to Billy, was apparently a coward. When Billy saw Stewart at the top of the stairs, his eyes widened. He knew Stewart didn't back out of things so easily, so he turned and sprinted back down the pathway to his bike. Jack remained on the porch, still trying to decipher the words as the voice spoke. He could hear it coming through the tiny hole in the broken window. 5 to enter, 1 to stay, the voice said. Jack gasped at the words coming from the window and fell on his butt. He quickly got to his feet, shuffled around Stewart, and ran down the stairs. Stewart did not hesitate and followed close behind him, toe to heel. Billy mounted his bicycle, his foot slipping off one of the pedals as he tried to flee. Jack and Stewart soon joined him, and the Ghost Riders fled as fast as they could back up Cemetery Hill until they knew they were at a safe distance from the house. "I think we're in the clear," Jack heaved. He dismounted his bike and walked it the rest of the way up the incline to where the street intersected Claiborne. Billy trailed behind, sweating profusely. "Who said that back there?" Stewart asked, out of breath. Jack shrugged. "I hope it wasn't someone who needed help. If we see on the news tomorrow about a body discovered inside that house, I'll feel guilty the rest of my life knowing we could have saved someone tonight." "Wait, you guys heard someone in the house?" Billy said as he caught up to them. "Okay, that does it. I'm not riding this way ever again, let alone go back to that stupid house. Man, I knew this was a bad idea." Suddenly, a police cruiser's emergency lights flashed in front of them. The vehicle stopped, and the officer rolled down his window. He gestured for the teens to approach. Jack felt his heart sink as he and his friends walked their bikes toward the cop. Billy was so nervous he reached into his back pocket for his switchblade comb. But the pocket was empty. "My comb? Where's my comb? Oh no, it must have fallen out while I was running." "If it ain't Jack Stinger and his gang," the officer said, shifting the cruiser into park. As a black man in uniform, he looked cool, with a high-top fade and his arm resting out the window. Jack knew the officer. Mike Polinsky was his father's friend from when they were in the Army. After completing their first-term enlistment, they parted ways. Several years later, they ran into each other when Mike, by coincidence, moved to the same small town of Rusty, Texas after being offered a job with the police department. Now he patrolled through Jack's neighborhood almost daily. "What are you boys doing out this way? What kind of mischief are you up to?" "Hey, Mike," Jack said, hanging his head low. "We're on our way home. We were just riding around." In case you didn't know, creeps roam around areas like this that are separated from neighborhoods. It's not safe around this place, guys. Being such a small town, you could easily get into some serious trouble. "Yes, sir," the boys replied. Billy thrust his hands in his pockets, feeling embarrassed. If only he had gone home when his friends set out to the creepy house after lunch, he would have never been in this predicament. Mike turned his head to Jack. "Look, I'm not kidding. It's dangerous out this way. Get home before I notify your parents," he demanded sternly. "I don't want to be the one to take the call when you and your friends turn up missing." "Yes, sir," Jack nodded. Sometimes he hated that Mike and his father were friends. The guy interfered too much with the family. "You're not my dad," he wanted to say, but he kept his mouth shut. Reaching into the breast pocket of his uniform, Mike pulled out a stack of football cards. Here, these came in hot off the press this morning. They aren't current players, but they're some of the most memorable ones. I expect all of you to heed my words about playing around this area. He handed Jack and his friends each a Dallas Cowboys football trading card. It was something the police in this rural town practiced, targeting kids playing outside. Although the cards were not worth anything, the program was designed to make youths feel safe and keep them out of trouble. Billy gasped like an excited little kid. "Thanks, officer!" His eyes lit up when he looked at his card and then slapped it against his chest. "Roger Staubach! I'm gonna keep this one sealed for sure. This is cool!" "I got Danny White," Stewart grinned. "Stay out of trouble and stay in school," Mike told them, then drove away, cutting off the emergency lights. Stewart slid his card into his back pocket. "I wonder if he's going to check out the house." "He's probably just turning around," Jack guessed. "I don't think he'll get out and walk around if that's what you mean." He gave his card to Billy, who was already thrilled to receive his first unofficial football trading card. Jack saw Mike often, so getting another one for himself was easy. He wanted to make Billy happy, since he felt kind of sorry for him as an unwilling accomplice to an attempted break-in at Whitlock Manor. Stewart hopped onto his bike with a concerned look on his face. "So, how does this affect the ghostwriters? Since we can't come back here, is this the end of our bike club? The house is what started it all." "That's something to think about," Jack said, still wondering about the voice he heard. "Let's talk at school tomorrow."